do this. So,
All right, give me 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, and you got it.
Okay, well, give me another 1, 2, 3.
I feel something coming on. Do you feel the same way? I feel something coming on.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of OneTake with Andrew. Although this one, I think David's going to have to do some editing on the countdown there. I got confused, so it might be 1.5 takes with Andrew on this one. But continuing, David, I think off of our last kind of little build, I'm really excited at the fact that there's been some people out there in the Twitterverse and on social media who sent in questions. And so I'd love to take one if you're up to that, David.
Yeah.
Great.
I we keep going with that.
So the question was sent in by Nick Rishwain. Folks out there can follow him at experts.com, but he's a man of two Twitter handles. That's his professional one. He also is at Nick J. Rishwain on Twitter. And he asked, have you talked about how students can prepare themselves for AI and the practice of law? And I love that question. I do speak at a lot of law schools, and ROSS is being used at various law schools already. And so I get that question a lot, is how can we prepare for this AI future? So that kind of touches on two things. One thing, and I don't want to kind of open up Pandora's box because it's such a huge topic in law, is, does that mean that law school students should start to learn how to be computer programmers or learn how to code, etc.? My take on that, and I know there's a bunch of people out there who feel very strongly about this. Eddie Hartman, for example, wrote a couple pieces and it's been back and forth. I don't think folks need to learn how to code. I personally have a very basic understanding of coding. I'm not an advanced AI specialist when it comes to the actual practical building side, but I think there's going to be a distinct career set that these students can tie into by understanding the fabric of what, how to do these things, what's going on behind the scenes, and learning and being a leader in that space. And I think now is a particularly exciting time in all this because, as with any new technology, whenever this happens, there needs to be leaders. And right now it's very early on in AI, and particularly AI in law, so that people out there in law schools can be the leaders of tomorrow. Growing up, watching different movies like Pirates of Silicon Valley, or it just really captured my mind about that computer revolution. Personal computing, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and all these funny, crazy stories that were going on. And then, of course, then there was the excitement of the internet and the pioneers there, America Online, and the folks behind that. And I think that's what we're seeing now with artificial intelligence. And I think how students can prepare, to answer your question, Nick, is really by getting a really great understanding of what's out there. Practical understanding of things like machine learning. What is natural language processing? How can visual AI be used? What is voice recognition, and how is that being used, and how can that be applied to things? And then getting out there and being part of teams. Another way that law school students can prepare for this new world, I think this is very exciting, is learning about all these new kind of things that are and new issues that are gonna emerge because AI is coming to law. Now, I'm not talking about building AI tools. What I'm talking about now is, let's take the self-driving car, for example. Self-driving car is gonna come with a lot of need for lawyers. So if a car hits another self-driving car, who's to pay? Is it going to be the people who own the car? Is it the car company? Who's at fault? Are we going to rely on the logs? All that sounds like to me is there's going to be a lot of opportunity for specialists who start studying that now. So if you're in law school, you want to get involved in AI, you can kind of do one of two ways. You can build these tools, you can be part of teams doing that, and that's kind of this genre, but also you can be purely involved from a practice of law perspective, but start to specialize on things around AI. Here's another example. You hear about self-driving cars, but how about drones and them flying predetermined routes, etc. When it enters people's property, and you're seeing this already now, what is the law regarding that? I mean, this is exciting, and I think there's going to be massive opportunities within the practice of law. And that's one way when I go out and I chat about AI in law that I think, sometimes people get so, worried about robots replacing us. And actually, I was on a panel with Nicole Bradrick, and she had a robot on that, and she said she'd bring one on OneTake. So Nicole, I have a wooden robot here, not as cool as the one you had. But you see stuff like this and you talk about replacing, and I tell people, A, it's about enhancing, but B, there's going to be such tremendous opportunity with new jobs coming. So keeping it practical, because I always want to have takeaways here, and David's looking at me like, give them something that to ground this all in. Okay, so how can law school students prepare for AI and law? One, no matter what, you got to educate yourself. Got to learn about this. You got to go to different events and tie into what's happening. Two, get out there and start doing things. So if you want to be more involved in the pure practice of law, start reading about different transportation laws, and different states are doing different things. Michigan recently passed some really interesting legislation. Check that out, write a blog post about it, etc. And lastly, I think don't be afraid and be adventurous. Law is such a beautiful thing because it evolves. You hear about the growing tree of law, and that's what I think law school students are at the most exciting time in law, because what we're seeing is law getting better and better, and artificial intelligence sometimes, like when you talk about this robot stuff, it's like, oh, AI marks the end of law. Like I always say, it actually really marks the beginning. So Nick, great question. Keep them coming. That's it for this episode of One Take with Andrew, and I am really happy to do these. So if anyone's out there, zip me via Twitter and email, whatever you get, smoke signal. I'm happy to talk to anything you guys want me to talk about. And that's One Take with Andrew, although, like I admitted, there was a bit of issues at the beginning, so maybe it was 1.5. Thanks, guys.